Nicholas' fingers flew across the keys. The glow of the screen, the only light in his cramped Seattle apartment. It was one of those evenings where the city felt like a soggy blanket smothering him. Gray skies bleeding into November. The kind of weather that made you question if the sun had ever existed. At 32, Nicholas had poured his soul into books for a decade, editing manuscripts for a mid-tier publishing house in Belltown, polishing other people's dreams until they shone. But dreams had a way of curdling. His last big project, a debut novel about lost love in the Cascades, had tanked sales. Too introspective, his boss had said, firing him with a handshake that felt like pity. Now, unemployment checks were his lift Nicolason, and the stack of unpaid bills on his kitchen table mocked him every morning. He'd always been the quiet type, the guy who blended into the fog of coffee shops and indie bookstores. Born and raised in Seattle, Nicholas grew up with the salt of Puget Sound in his veins and the echo of grunge records in his ears. Nirvana posters panicolasing on his childhood bedroom walls. His parents, both teachers who divorced when he was 12, had taught him the value of words. His mom with her poetry slams, his dad with dog-eared sci-fi paperbacks. But words had betrayed him. After college at the University of Washington, he chased the literary world, only to find it as cutthroat as a back-alley deal. And love? That was a punchline. His last boyfriend, a barista named Theo with tattoos like storm clouds, had ghosted him after 6 months, leaving Nicholas's with a half-empty closet and a heart that felt like it had been redlined in the margins. Tonight, though, something shifted. The rejection email wasn't just about his side gig manuscript. It was the final straw. Lacks heart. Bullshit. Nicholas's had heart. It just beat too softly for the world to hear. He opened a blank document, the cursor blinking like a dare. What if he wrote something raw? Something that didn't pander? He started with a scene. A man standing on the edge of a cliff in the Olympic Peninsula. Wind whipping his dark hair. Eyes like polished obsidian holding secrets that could topple empires. Ronan Hale. The name came unbidden, sharp as a switchblade. Ronan wasn't a hero. Nicholas's made sure of that. He was the antagonist in a thriller about a small-town journalist uncovering corporate corruption in a fictional logging town called Ridge Hollow, Washington. Ronan owned the mill that poisoned the rivers, charmed the locals with his silver tongue, and bedded his way through rivals without a flicker of remorse. But Nicholas's layered him with depth. Nights spent staring at old photos of a brother lost to the same industry, a vulnerability hidden behind smirks and tailored suits. As Nicholas's wrote, Ronan's voice filled the room, low and gravelly, laced with that Pacific Northwest drawl. You think you can expose me? Darling, I've been burying truths since before you learned to lie. Hours blurred. Nicholas's typed until his wrists ached. The rain a relentless percussion. By dawn, he'd hit 5,000 words, Ronan's shadow looming larger than the plot. In one scene, Ronan cornered the protagonist in a dimly lit bar, breath hot against his ear. Run if you want, but you'll always come back. We're the same, you and I, chasing ghosts we can't outrun. Nicholas's paused, heart pounding. Why did that feel personal? He saved the file, Ridge Hollow Shadows, and collapsed onto his futon, the city's hum fading into uneasy sleep. Dreams came fractured. Ronan's face morphing into Theo's, then his own, all of them laughing at his failures. He woke to a knock at the door. His neighbor, Mrs. Keller, dropping off a care package of soup. You look like hell, kid, she said, her voice thick with the accent of someone who'd fled the Dust Bowl generations ago. Nicholas's forced a smile, thanked her, and shut the door. The soup went cold on the counter. He couldn't eat. Words were his sustenance now. That afternoon, he ventured out to the daily grind, a hole-in-the-wall coffee shop in Capitol Hill with mismatched chairs and walls papered in faded band flyers. It was his ritual. Black coffee, strong enough to wake the dead, and people watching to spark ideas. The place buzzed with the usual crowd. Tech bros tapping away on MacBooks, artists sketching in the corners, a drag queen nursing a latte between shifts. Nicholas's claimed his spot by the window, laptop open, but his mind wandered back to Ronan. What if the villain won? What if he deserved to? As he sipped his coffee, the door chimed, and in walked a man who stopped Nicholas' heart mid-beat. Tall, broad-shouldered, with ink-black hair slicked back from a forehead marked by faint worry lines. He wore a leather jacket over a crisp white shirt, unbuttoned just enough to reveal a sliver of tan chest, and jeans that hugged his legs like they'd been tailored for sin. His eyes, God, those eyes were a deep, stormy gray, scanning the room with the lazy confidence of someone who owned every space he entered. He ordered a double espresso, voice low and commanding, with that subtle Northwest lilt. "Make it quick. I've got shadows to chase." Nicholas' mug slipped from his fingers, splashing hot liquid across the table. He cursed under his breath, grabbing napkins, but his gaze locked on the stranger. Couldn't be. The jawline, the smirk tugging at full lips, the way he leaned against the counter like the world bent to him. It was Ronan. Flesh and blood, ordering coffee in a Seattle dive like he'd stepped off the page. The man turned, catching Nicholas's staring. Their eyes met and time stuttered. "Rough day?" the stranger asked, sauntering over with a rag in hand, wiping the spill without asking. Up close, he smelled like cedar and rain-soaked earth. Intoxicating. Nicholas stammered. "Yeah, just clumsy." His cheeks burned. "Get it together." But the man lingered, dropping into the opposite chair uninvited. "Clumsy's a sign the universe is trying to get your attention," he said, extending a hand. Ronan Hale." Nicholas' world tilted. "Nicholas's thorn," he managed, shaking the hand that felt too real, too warm. Ronan's grip was firm, calloused from what? Logging? Writing? "You from around here?" "Born in the shadow of the Olympics," Ronan replied, leaning back, legs stretched out. "Ridge Hollow, actually. You know it?" Nicholas' pulse thundered. Ridge Hollow, the made-up town. Heard of it. Sounds fictional. Ronan chuckled. A sound like distant thunder. "Everything good is." He eyed the laptop. "Writer. Editor, mostly. Trying my hand at fiction." Nicholas' voice cracked. This had to be coincidence. Cosmic joke. Ronan's gaze sharpened, like he could see through skin to bone. "What's it about?" "A villain," Nicholas's blurted. "Who looks a lot like you." The laugh again, richer this time. "Flattery or threat?" "Both," Nicholas said, surprising himself. For the first time in months, words flowed easy, charged with something electric. They talked for hours, about Seattle's relentless rain, the way it mirrored unspoken regrets. About books that saved lives, Ronan swore by Steinbeck's raw grit. About the ache of creating worlds when your own felt unrav Nicholasing. Ronan was a contractor, he said, restoring old mills up north. But his eyes lit when he spoke of stories, of the lies we tell to make truth bearable. Nicholas's didn't mention the manuscript. Not yet. But as Ronan stood to leave, scribbling his number on a napkin, "Call if you need a muse," Nicholas's felt a spark ignite in the ruins of his hope. Back home, rain lashing the windows, he opened the file. Ronan's scene stared back, but now it felt alive, pulsing. He added a line. And in that moment, the villain extended a hand, pulling the hero into the storm. Sleep evaded him that night, Ronan's number burning a hole in his pocket. What if fiction bled into reality? What if the villain wasn't the monster, but the salvation? Nicholas's woke to the insistent buzz of his phone, sunlight slicing through the blinds like a reluctant apology. It was noon, late for a man with no schedule, and the text from an unknown number read, "Shadows await. Coffee? R." His stomach flipped, a mix of dread and thrill churning like the sound on a stormy day. He typed back before he could overthink. "Daily grind. 2 p.m.? The reply was instant. "Perfect. Bring your villain." The apartment felt smaller as he showered, steam fogging the mirror where his reflection stared back. Hollow-cheeked, eyes ringed with fatigue, but alive in a way they hadn't been since Theo. He dressed in his least worn jeans and a Henley that hugged his lean frame, ran fingers through his damp hair, and stepped into the drizzle. Seattle in autumn was a watercolor of grays and greens, streets slick with fallen leaves, the air crisp with the promise of winter. As he walked the few blocks to Capitol Hill, Nicholas' mind raced. Ronan Hale couldn't be real. Yet the napkin with his number crinkled in his pocket, proof against delusion. The grind was packed when he arrived. Afternoon rush of freelancers and tourists dodging the rain. Ronan was already there, at the same table, 2 steaming mugs waiting. He looked even better in daylight. Stubble shadowing his jaw, a faint scar above his left eyebrow adding to the rogue allure. You showed, Ronan said, sliding a mug over. Black, no sugar, just how Nicholas's liked it. Curiosity killed the editor, Nicholas's quipped, sitting. Up close, Ronan's presence was overwhelming, like standing too near a bonfire, warm, but edged with danger. They fell into easy rhythm, words weaving like threads in a tapestry. Ronan shared snippets of his life. Growing up in Ridge Hollow, a real speck of a town nestled in the Hoh rainforest, where his family ran a lumber mill until it folded under EPA scrutiny. Dad drank himself into the grave-blaming tree-huggers, Ronan said, voice steady but eyes distant. I got out, started fixing what others broke. Houses, barns, ghosts of industries gone wrong. There was a weight to it, an echo of the backstory Nicholas's had given his fictional Ronan. Coincidence? Or had the universe been eavesdropping? Nicholas's opened up too, halting at first, then spilling like the rain outside. The firing, the empty manuscript queries, the way love had slipped through his fingers like wet rope. Theo, he was everything. Artist, free spirit. Then one day, poof. Gone to Portland with some gallery owner. Saying it aloud stung less with Ronan listening, his gaze unwavering. No pity, just understanding. You're not broken, Nicholas's, Ronan said softly, reaching across to brush a thumb over Nicholas' knuckles. The touch lingered, electric, sending heat coiling low in Nicholas' belly. You're just paused, like a story waiting for the right twist. By the time they parted, Ronan heading to a job site in Fremont, Nicholas's back to his laptop. The sun had broken through, casting golden halos on the wet pavement. That night, Nicholas's revised. Ronan's realness infused the pages. The villain now whispered doubts that mirrored Nicholas' own. Why fight when surrender feels so sweet? He wrote a new scene, Ronan seducing the protagonist under a canopy of ferns, hands rough and sure, lips promising redemption in the dark. Heat flushed Nicholas' skin as he typed, imagination blurring with memory of that thumb on his hand. He saved it, heart hammering, and texted Ronan. Twist added, dinner tomorrow? Their second date, if that's what it was at a dimly lit Italian place in Queen and, overlooking the lights of the bay. Ronan arrived with wildflowers tucked in his jacket pocket, daisies and ferns that smelled of the forest. From the sight, he explained, a sheepish grin cracking his facade. Over pasta carbonara and Chianti, they delved deeper. Ronan confessed his own ghosts. A brother, Caleb, who died young in a mill accident, the guilt that Ronan carried like a second skin. I was supposed to watch him that day, 15 years old, and I let him wander. His voice cracked, just once, and Nicholas's reached for him, fingers intertwining under the table. In return, Nicholas's shared his queerness like a secret long guarded. The coming out at 17, the supportive but distant parents, the hookups in college that left him hollow. I always fall for the ones who run, he admitted, wine loosening his tongue. Ronan's eyes darkened, not with judgment, but hunger. Then don't fall, Ronan murmured, leaning in. Jump. The kiss happened in the alley behind the restaurant. Rain-slick bricks pressing against Nicholas' back as Ronan's mouth claimed his, fierce, unyielding, tasting of wine and want. Hands roamed, bunching fabric, breaths mingling in the downpour. It was messy, desperate, the kind of kiss that rewrote endings. Nicholas's melted into it, fingers threading Ronan's hair, pulling him closer until the world narrowed to heartbeat and heat. They tumbled back to Nicholas' apartment, clothes shedding like old skins. Ronan's body was a revelation, corded muscle from manual labor, scars mapping stories across his torso. One jagged line over his ribs from a chainsaw slip. Nicholas's traced it with lips and tongue, worshipping the flaws that made him real. In bed, it was slow at first, exploratory. Ronan's mouth mapping Nicholas' throat, hands pinning wrists with gentle command. Then urgency built, bodies arching, gasps echoing off the walls. Ronan moved with the grace of a predator turned lover, whispering Nicholas' name like a prayer, drawing out pleasure until tears pricked Nicholas' eyes. Afterward, tangled in sheets, Ronan traced patterns on Nicholas' chest. You're dangerous, he said, half laughing. Me? You're the one who feels like he stepped out of my book. Nicholas's hesitated, then pulled up the manuscript on his laptop, propped against the nightstand. He read aloud, voice trembling, the scene of seduction mirroring their night. Ronan's reactions, gasps, then silence, were a mirror to Nicholas' soul. "This is me," Ronan whispered finally, awe threading his tone. "How did you know?" "I didn't," Nicholas's lied, heart aching. "I just felt it." Lies, even white ones, have weight. As Ronan slept beside him, Nicholas's stared at the ceiling, rain pattering like accusations. What if Ronan discovered the truth? That he was born from ink and isolation, a villain crafted to fill a void? Dawn crept in, and with it, doubt. But Ronan's arm tightened around him, pulling him close, and for now, Nicholas's let himself be Nicholasov in the fiction they'd woven together. Weeks blurred into a rhythm that felt dangerously like home. Mornings at the grind, plotting scenes over coffee. Afternoons wandering Pike Place, stealing kisses amid fishmongers and flower stalls. Evenings in Ronan's truck, driving winding roads to hidden beaches where they'd make love under stars, the ocean's roar drowning their cries. Ronan fit Nicholas' life like a missing chapter, challenging his cynicism, coaxing laughter from his chest. He even met Mrs. Keller, charming her with tales of Ridge Hollow that had her eyes misty. But shadows lingered. Nicholas' manuscript grew, the plot thickening, the protagonist uncovering Ronan's corruption, a betrayal that shattered trust. Writing it now felt like prophecy, each keystroke a tremor. One night, as they lay spent, Ronan propped on an elbow, studying him. "This story of yours, does the villain redeem himself?" Nicholas's swallowed. "Haven't decided." Ronan kissed his temple. "Make him worth saving." The words haunted Nicholas's as he revised alone the next day, Ronan's truck rumbling away to a job. Worth saving. But villains, by nature, destroy. November deepened, Seattle's skies a perpetual bruise, mirroring the slow bloom of something tender in Nicholas' chest. 3 weeks with Ronan, and hope wasn't just a word anymore. It was the brush of stubble against his neck at dawn, the way Ronan's laugh rumbled like thunder over Queen and Hill. They'd carved out a bubble. Lazy Sundays at the Elliott Bay Book Company, Ronan devouring pulp thrillers while Nicholas's edited freelance gigs that trickled in, buoyed by Ronan's quiet pride. "You're brilliant," he'd say, simple as that, and Nicholas's almost be Nicholaseved it. But bubbles burst. It started with a call from his ex-boss at the publishing house, a Hail Mary lift Nicolason. "We've got a hole in acquisitions. Your eye could fill it part-time, but we need a pitch. Something fresh." Nicholas' pulse quickened. Ridge Hollow Shadows. It was raw, unfinished, but electric. He polished a synopsis that night, Ronan out on a late site visit, the apartment echoing with his absence. Ronan returned smelling of sawdust and salt, pulling Nicholas's into a kiss that tasted of promise. "Missed you," he murmured, hands sliding under Nicholas' shirt. They made love on the living room floor, urgent and unhurried, bodies speaking what words fumbled. Afterward, sated and tangled, Nicholas's showed him the synopsis. Ronan's eyes scanned the page, darkening as he read his own likeness, the mill owner with a fractured past, seducing the truth-seeker. "This is us," Ronan said, not a question. His finger traced the line. "Ronan Hale, the devil in flannel, who beds his enemies and buries their secrets." Nicholas's nodded, throat tight. "Inspired by, mostly." Ronan's smile was sharp, approving. "Pitch it. Let the world meet me." Emboldened, Nicholas's submitted. Days stretched taut, waiting for replies. To distract, Ronan planned a weekend escape. A cabin in the Olympics, near the real Ridge Hollow, his childhood haunt. "Show you where the magic started," he said, packing Nicholas' favorite flannel. The drive wound through evergreens, mist clinging to the windshield like secrets. Ronan's truck hummed with classic rock, Pearl Jam's gritty anthems, fitting the landscape of jagged peaks and hidden valleys. The cabin was rustic charm. Cedar walls, a stone fireplace, windows framing the Hoh River's murmur. They arrived at dusk, unpacking groceries for a feast, fresh salmon from a roadside stand, crusty bread, a bottle of Pinot from the Willamette Valley. As night fell, stars pierced the canopy, and they hiked a trail by lantern light, hands linked, Ronan's stories painting the dark. Ghost tales of loggers lost to the wild, his brother's laughter echoing in the wind. Around the fire pit, flames crackling, Ronan opened up further. Caleb, he was the dreamer. Wanted to write like you. I was the fixer, always patching what broke. His voice roughened. After the accident, I ran. Contracts here, there. Never stayed long enough to feel the roots. Nicholas's leaned into him, the heat of body and fire mingling. You're staying now. Ronan's arm tightened. Yeah, for you. That night, in the cabin's loft bed, love unfolded like the forest outside. Deep, enveloping, roots delving. Ronan's touches were reverent, mapping Nicholas' skin with lips and whispers. Mine, he breathed, entering slow, eyes locked, building to a crescendo that left them shattered and whole. Dawn found them entwined, birdsong filtering through cracks, the world soft-edged. But reality intruded Monday, back in the city. Nicholas' inbox pinged. An offer from the publisher. Conditional, full manuscript in 2 weeks with revisions. Elation surged, shared over breakfast at Ronan's cramped Fremont loft. A space cluttered with tools and half-read books. We celebrate, Ronan declared, pulling Nicholas's onto the counter for a kiss that devolved into laughter and more. Revision consumed Nicholas's. He wrote feverishly, the plot escalating. The protagonist, a stand-in for himself named Jude, confronts Ronan in the mill's ruins, accusations flying like sparks. Betrayal loomed. Jude discovers Ronan's role in covering up the poisoning, a lie that poisons their bond. Nicholas's wove in their real moments. The alley kiss, the cabin fire, making the romance visceral, heartbreaking. Ronan read drafts over his shoulder, offering notes with a contractor's precision. Make the villain fight dirtier, he'd say, smirking. Real men don't fold easy. His input sharpened the edges, but unease gnawed at Nicholas's. Ronan saw himself too clearly, the charm masking pain, the seduction a weapon. One evening, as Nicholas's typed a scene of Jude walking away, Ronan watched from the doorway, expression unreadable. You think I'd let him go? Ronan asked, voice low. In the story? Yeah. Heroes need to break to heal. Ronan crossed the room, tilting Nicholas' chin up. And in real life? The kiss was possessive, edged with something darker, desire laced with demand. They fell into bed, Ronan's body a storm over Nicholas, thrusts deep and claiming, as if staking territory. Pleasure crested sharp, leaving bruises like signatures. Afterward, Ronan's head on Nicholas' chest, he murmured, Don't let me be the villain, Nicholas's. Not for real. The words lodged like thorns. Nicholas's held him tighter, but sleep brought dreams of ink bleeding into blood. The acceptance came mid-revision. Full contract, advance modest but real. Champagne at the grind, Ronan's toast. To shadows that light the way, sealed it. But celebration soured when Nicholas' phone buzzed again. Theo, in town. Coffee? Miss you. Heart stuttering, Nicholas's deleted it, but the ghost lingered. Ronan noticed the shift. Old flames. Just ash. Nicholas's lied, hating the taste. Trust frayed subtly. Ronan worked longer hours, coming home dusty and distant. Phone buzzing with texts he silenced. Nicholas's buried in edits, Jude's betrayal mirroring his fears. What if Ronan saw the manuscript's heart? The way the villain was born from Nicholas' Lon Nicholasness. A projection of desire for danger? Climax brewed one rainy Thursday. Nicholas's, deep in a scene where Jude exposes Ronan's lies, heard the door slam. Ronan stormed in, soaked, eyes blazing. In his hand, printed pages, dog-eared, the dedication Nicholas's had added impulsively. For RH, the villain who saved me. You wrote this before we met, Ronan accused, voice thunder. How? The mill fire, Caleb's death, details I never shared. Nicholas's froze, manuscript open on his lap. Truth crashed like waves. I made it up. Then you walked in and it fit. Like fate. Ronan's laugh was bitter. Fate? Or obsession? You created me to fuck the pain away. Words tumbled, explanations please, but Ronan recoiled. I thought this was real. But I'm just your puppet. Strings pulled by some heartbroken editor. He grabbed his jacket, door slamming echo. Nicholas's chased into the storm, streets rivers of regret. Ronan, wait! But the truck's taillights vanished into the night, leaving Nicholas's drenched, alone, the villain's rejection sharper than fiction. The apartment felt cavernous without Ronan, echoes amplifying the void. Nicholas's paced the rain-lashed floors, manuscript scattered like fallen leaves, each page an accusation. How had he let it unravel? The dedication, stupid, sentimental, had cracked the facade. But deeper, the fear gnawed. Ronan was right. Nicholas's had conjured him from despair. A balm for wounds Theo left, for the firing that stripped his identity. Love built on lies, no matter how unintended, eroded like Seattle's bluffs in winter gales. He tried calling, voicemail curt and cold. Texts went unread. Please, let's talk. It's not what you think. By midnight, desperation clawed. He drove to Ronan's loft in Fremont, wipers slashing futilely. The building loomed dark, truck absent. A neighbor, bleary-eyed, confirmed. Hale? Packed a bag, peeled out hours ago. Looked like hell. Nicholas's returned home defeated, curling on the futon where they'd laughed weeks before. Sleep came fitful, dreams of Ronan dissolving into ink, words smearing on skin. Dawn brought resolve. He wouldn't beg. Instead, he wrote, pouring the pain into the climax, Jude's confrontation rawer, Ronan's villainy laced with redemption's ghost. Fingers bled metaphorically on keys, catharsis in creation. Days bled into a week. Freelance edits sustained him, but isolation deepened. Mrs. Keller's worried glances, unanswered calls from his mom in Tacoma. Theo texted again, heard you're published. Drinks to celebrate? Nicholas's blocked him, the past a chain he refused to drag forward. Then, a package arrived, no return address, brown paper crinkled like old bark. Inside, a worn journal, pages filled with Ronan's scrawl, sketches of Mills, fragments of stories about Caleb, dreams of a life beyond fixing. Tucked in the back, a note. You saw me before I did, but seeing isn't owning. Find your heart, Nicholas's. Our tears blurred the ink. Ronan hadn't run blindly. He'd left a piece of himself, vulnerable as the scars Nicholas's had kissed. It fueled the final revisions. The villain doesn't die. He confesses, raw and ruined, offering Jude a choice, truth over illusion. Nicholas's submitted the manuscript Friday, fingers trembling on send. Publishers reply, brilliant. We see series potential. Elation hollow without sharing. He drove to Ridge Hollow uninvited. The real town a misty hamlet of clapboard houses and fern-choked paths. Locals directed him to the old Hale mill, boarded up, vines reclaiming its bones. Ronan was there, of course, hammer in hand, tearing down rotted beams, shirt soaked with sweat and rain. He froze at Nicholas' approach, jaw set. Go home, Ronan said, not turning. Story's over. Nicholas's stepped closer, journal clutched like a shield. This isn't fiction. You left this. Why? Ronan paused, shoulders sagging. Because you deserve the real me, not the one you dreamed up. He faced Nicholas's then, eyes storm-tossed. I freaked. Felt like a character in your redemption arc. But running, that's the villain move. Our Nicholasef cracked Nicholas' voice. You're not a character. You're everything. I wrote from hurt, yeah, but what we have, that's mine. Ours. Ronan dropped the hammer, crossing the distance in strides. They collided. Fists and shirts, mouths crashing, rain mingling with tears. Missed you, Ronan growled against Nicholas' lips, hands framing his face. Idiot. Forgive me. Only if you forgive yourself. Ronan's kiss deepened, grounding. The mill's shadow a witness to their raw reunion. They talked for hours in the cab of the truck, engine idling against the chill. Ronan confessed his own deceptions. The late nights weren't jobs, but therapy. Group sessions for survivors of industry loss, unpacking Caleb's ghost. Felt weak admitting it, like the strong guy couldn't crack. Nicholas's shared the revisions, the redemption arc, you're the hero now. If you'll have it. Ronan's grin flashed, wicked. Villains make better lovers. Back in Seattle, they rebuilt brick by brick. Dates resumed. Quiet dinners at home. Ronan cooking salmon with herbs from his pocket garden. Walks along Alki Beach, hands linked against the wind. Intimacy reignited fiercer, tempered by truth. Slow mornings in bed, exploring with patience. Ronan's whispers now laced with futures. Our cabin, next summer. Drawing gasps and arches from Nicholas' body, pleasure a bridge over scars. But peace was fragile. Holiday lights twinkled early in Capitol Hill, a reminder of gatherings Nicholas's dreaded alone. His mom's annual Thanksgiving invite loomed, laced with questions about that boy. Ronan sensed the tension, suggesting they go together. Show them the man who tamed a villain. The drive to Tacoma was tense, evergreens blurring past. Nicholas' childhood home was a craftsman bungalow, porch strung with lights, the air thick with turkey and pie. His mom, Lena, hugged Ronan like a long-lost son, her poet's eye catching the spark. Dad, grizzled and quiet, clapped Ronan's shoulder over football talk. Dinner unfolded warm, stories flowing. Lena reciting verses about lost loves reclaimed, Dad sharing mill tales that echoed Ronan's. Under the table, Ronan's foot nudged Nicholas, a silent anchor. Later, by the fire, Lena pulled Nicholas's aside. He's good for you. Real. Her eyes twinkled. Write him true. Christmas approached, snow dusting the sound, a rarity that blanketed the city in hush. Ronan surprised Nicholas's with a typewriter, vintage royal, keys like piano notes. For the stories we haven't told. In return, Nicholas's gifted a leather-bound journal, first page inscribed, to the man who blurred the lines. New Year's Eve found them on Ronan's rooftop, city sprawl glittering below, champagne flutes clinking. Fireworks bloomed as Ronan dropped to one knee. Not proposal, but promise. No rings yet, but this. He slipped a silver chain from his pocket, a pendant of carved fern. Roots with you. Nicholas's fastened it, throat tight. Always. Their kiss swallowed the countdown, bodies swaying into the night. But as January chilled, a shadow crept. The publisher's notes arrived. Love the arc, but amp the betrayal. Make the villain hurt more. Nicholas's stared at the screen, gut twisting. Ronan, reading over his shoulder, tensed. Do it. Truth heals. Yet doubt whispered. Hurt more? The words felt prophetic. January's frost bit deep, Seattle's bones aching under ice-sheathed streets. Nicholas's and Ronan's rhythm held, mornings tangled in flannel sheets, Ronan's coffee brewing strong while Nicholas's typed at the kitchen table. But the publisher's notes festered like an untreated wound. Amp the betrayal. He revised late into nights, Jude's discovery of Ronan's cover-up now visceral. Forged documents, a lover discarded to protect the lie. Ronan's input sharpened it. Make me ruthless. But his eyes held shadows, as if arnicolasting old guilts. Freelance picked up, a buffer against the advance's weight. Nicholas's took on a memoir from a queer activist in San Francisco, words of defiance that mirrored his own journey. Ronan supported, quietly proud, but distance grew in inches. Longer hours at sites, silences stretching like fog. One evening, Nicholas's found him on the fire escape, staring at the bay, cigarette unlit between fingers, a habit he'd quit for Nicholas's. Penny for him? Nicholas's asked, sliding beside him. Ronan exhaled smoke he hadn't inhaled. Just, the mill. Got a contract to demo the old Hale place. Feels like erasing Caleb. Nicholas' hand found his. Or reclaiming. The demolition was cathartic. Ronan swinging the sledgehammer, beams splintering like broken promises. Nicholas's filming on his phone for posterity. Dust swirled. Ronan emerging streaked and triumphant, pulling Nicholas's into a kiss amid the rubble. New starts, he rasped, hands urgent, pressing Nicholas's against a surviving wall. They made love there, raw and reckless. The ruin a bed of grit and grit, release a roar against ghosts. But fortune twisted. The manuscript edits finalized, arcs printed, advance reader copies for blurbs. Nicholas's mailed one to Ronan with a note. Your story, our truth. Days later, a call from the publisher. Buzz, early praise. Then, a review snippet leaked online, from a beta reader. Twisted romance, but the villain's redemption feels forced. Too pat for the betrayal's bite. Ronan saw it first on his phone during breakfast. His face shuddered, fork pausing midair. Forced, huh? Nicholas's reached for him. It's one opinion. The heart's there. Is it? Ronan's voice edged sharp. Or did you soften me for the happy ending? The argument ignited slow, then blazed. Words flew. Nicholas's accusing Ronan of projecting insecurities. Ronan hurling back that Nicholas's treated life like plot points. You wrote me as monster, then hero. Which is it? Both. Nicholas's shouted, voice breaking. Like us. Ronan stormed out, door rattling the frame. Nicholas's collapsed, sobs racking, the arc on the table mocking him. Hours later, a text. Need space. Don't follow. Space stretched to days. Nicholas's threw into promo podcasts on queer lit bookstore signings in Bellingham. Crowds applauded, but applause echoed hollow. Theo resurfaced via mutual friend. Saw your book. Congrats. Still owe you that drink? Delete. Block. Focus. Ronan vanished into work. Rumors from Ridge Hollow. Hale taking solo contracts, holing up in a motel. Nicholas's drove there once, heart in throat, but chickened at the door. Light on, shadows moving, but knock unspoken. Back home, he wrote a short story for a lit mag about lovers blurring fiction and flesh, submitted under pseudonym. Valentine's loomed, a cruel joke. Flowers wilted on the counter, UND Nicholasford. Then, a knock, Mrs. Keller, bearing pie and news. Your man's at the grind. Been every morning. Staring at your spot. Nicholas's went at dawn, heart pounding. Ronan sat there, haggard, eyes lifting as Nicholas's entered. No words at first, just gaze heavy with unsaid. Then, Ronan slid a napkin across. Truce? My place. The loft smelled of fresh paint and pine. Ronan in sweats, take-out tie steaming on the coffee table. They ate in silence, then talked, halting, honest. Ronan admitted fear. The book made me real, but what if readers see through? See the cracks? Nicholas's confessed too. I amp the hurt because I know it. From Theo, from losing you. Hands met across the table, sparking. Reconnection was tentative. Kisses soft, bodies rediscovering like old maps. Ronan's touches healed. Slow circles on Nicholas' back. Murmurs of sorry against skin. They built to urgency. Ronan entering with a gasp. Rhythms sinking like tides. Climax a shared sob of release. But betrayal brewed unseen. Launch party approached. Packed house at Elliott Bay, champagne and schmoozing. Nicholas's invited Ronan, who agreed, suit pressed, arm linked proud. The night hummed. Toasts, hugs from agents. Readers gushing. Ronan so complex. A woman, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, approached. Incredible villain. Knew a Hale once. Dark horse that family. Ronan stiffened beside Nicholas's. Post-party in the truck he exploded. That was Marissa, Caleb's old flame. She blabbed to the press. Said the books ripped from headlines. Implying I poisoned those rivers for real. Nicholas blood-chilled. It's fiction. Not to her. Or the town. Ronan's knuckles whitened on the wheel. They'll think I'm the monster you wrote. Accusations flew again. Nicholas's too ambitious. Ronan too fragile. You used me. Ronan roared, pulling over on a slick Aurora Avenue. My pain for art. I shared it with you. Nicholas's yelled back, tears hot. We built it together. Ronan shoved the door open, rain sheeting in. Then burn it. He walked into the night, vanishing into shadows. Nicholas's drove home alone, party high crashing to despair. Voicemails piled. Publisher thrilled at buzz, but Nicholas's ignored. Dawn brought clarity and horror. A news alert. Local author's novel spark scandal in Ridge Hollow. Inspiration or appropriation? Marissa's interview twisting facts, painting Ronan as culprit in old EPA probes. Guilt crushed. Nicholas's called Ronan voicemail. Drove to the loft. Empty. Note on the counter. Need to fix my own story. Don't wait. Heart splintering. Nicholas's faced the wreckage. Love, the villain he'd birthed, now devouring them both. February's thaw came slow. Seattle's ice melting into puddles that reflected fractured skies. Nicholas's moved through days on autopilot. Signings blurred into one. Smiles plastered. Questions about the muse deflected with laughs that rang false. The scandal simmered. Tabloid fodder in local rags. Ridge Hollow whispers amplified online. Ronan Hale, the real-life villain. Dodging calls from reporters, holing up in the wilds. Nicholas inbox flooded. Support from queer-lit circles, vitriol from trolls, but the silence from Ronan cut deepest. He threw into damage control. A statement to the publisher, clarifying fiction's roots in emotion, not event. Ridge Hollow Shadows is a love letter to reinvention. It read, not accusation. Blurbs poured in, sales ticked up, but victory tasted ash. Nights alone. Nicholas's revisited the journal Ronan left. Caleb's echoes and margins. Ronan's dreams sketched rough. One entry gutted him. Want a life where I'm not the fixer. Where love doesn't break what I build. Theo called, unblocked in weakness, offering perspective. Nicholas's met him at a neutral cafe in Ballard. Waves lapping gray docks outside. Theo, still ink-smeared and charming, leaned in. You always idealized. That's why I left. Too much pressure to be your storybook. Words landed like slaps. And you were. Nicholas's retorted, voice steel. A chapter 1 closed. He left with closure, not comfort. Theo's truth a mirror to his flaws. Back home, Nicholas's wrote Ronan a letter, old school on the royal. Raw apologies, admissions of using pain as plot, but swearing the love was unscripted. Mailed to Ridge Hollow, no return expected. Weeks dragged. Mom visited, bearing clam chowder and lectures. Love's messy kid. Like poetry, rhymes eventually. Her hug lingered, a bomb. Dad called too, gruff. Heard about the book, proud. Fix it like you fix words. Spring teased, cherry blossoms unfurling in the U District, a metaphor Nicholas's clung to. Launch day arrived. Packed house, nerves electric. Nicholas's read the opening, voice steady. Ronan's birth on page alive in the room. Q&A turned to the scandal. He owned it. Fiction draws from life, but life defies outlines. My villain taught me that. Applause thundered, but eyes scanned the crowd. No Ronan. Signing over, a shadow in the back. Broad shoulders, dark hair. Heart leaping, Nicholas's wove through fans. Ronan, suit rumpled, eyes weary but warm. Read your letter, he said, voice rough. Burned it. Too real to keep. Nicholas' breath hitched. Stay. Ronan pulled him into shadows, kiss fierce, tasting of road dust and resolve. Tried running, couldn't. You're in my blood. They talked in the bookstore's alcove, whispers amid shelved worlds. Ronan had faced the town. Meetings with elders, truths aired about the mill's sins, his family's complicity. Cleared the air. Even Marissa apologized. Said the book made her see Caleb clear. Our Nicolasa flooded. And us. Ronan's hand cupped Nicholas' jaw. Rewrite the ending. Together. Home was a sanctuary renewed. They cooked. Ronan's salmon, Nicholas' risotto. Laughter bubbling like forgotten spring. Bed welcomed slow, bodies reconnecting. Ronan's lips on scars, Nicholas' fingers in hair. Union deep and denical aspirate. Waves of pleasure cresting in whispers of forever. No rush, just presence. Aftershocks lingering in tangled limbs. Summer bloomed. Their cabin retreat realized. Ho River singing. Ferns whispering approval. They hiked, hands linked, Ronan sharing boyhood spots. Caleb's favorite overlook, now a clearing for dreams. Evenings by fire, Nicholas's reading drafts of Book 2. Jude and Ronan, post-betrayal, forging fragile peace. Ronan's notes, more hope. Challenges lingered. Press hounds, town healing slow, but they faced as unit. Pride in June. Rainbow flags waving. Ronan beside Nicholas's at the parade. Arms slung casual. Kiss public and unapologetic. Villains out, he joked to cheers. Fall circled back. Anniversary marked quiet. Daily grind. Mugs steaming. Napkin notes exchanged. To the editor who edited my heart. Ronan's words simple, profound. The book hit shelves nationwide. Bestseller whispers. Reviews lauded. A villain's humanity, raw and redemptive. Nicholas's dedicated reprints. For Ronan, realer than words. One rainy night, years echo. They stood on the fire escape, city humming below. Ronan's ring, simple band, engraved with fern, slipped on Nicholas' finger. Marry me? Not plot, promise. Yes, Nicholas's breathed, pulling him close. Their kiss sealed it. Rain blessing. Love a story unfinished but true. In the end, villains don't stay shadowed. They step into light, hand in hand with the hearts they once haunted. And in that grace, freedom blooms, not despite flaws, but through them. Compassion, the quiet editor, trims the excess, leaving essence. Two men, woven from hurt and hope, writing their forever.